Michael, Senior AE at Trumpet. Thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Sam.
Cool. Michael, right. So obviously I've done my due diligence and done all the stalking under the sun on LinkedIn. So Trumpet, obviously very famously, I think does it G2 rank you number one for digital sales rooms? Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's 5 quarters in a row now.
Yeah, okay, and still the undisputed champion. We love that. But you've also kind of branched across supply chain tech, product analytics, and even prop tech. So very versatile. But perhaps we could open with giving a bit of intro about you and your journey to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in a lot of ways it's probably the typical sales journey. Spent 3 years as a BDR. I got a really good blend of sort of doing it in fintech at a really small startup where nobody knows your name. And we were, had a box of ties in the office. And if I managed to book a meeting for that afternoon, we'd grab one each and sort of fly out, one of the 4 of us from the office, and spend time at Sprinkler, then doing a very different kind of BDR role, focused on like, hey, my rep's got 15 accounts for this year. How do I get them in there and really get them in there, not looking at sort of activity as like a be all and end all. And then, moved into sales in the likes of prop tech with Landtex and into property developers, jumped up to Pendo to try and get into a more complex solution sell at a time when it was really difficult to be selling product technology. I think product very much was like the last food door first out when COVID hit.
Yeah.
So that was difficult, but I probably spent a lot of time mixed between like really early stage, like how do we get our footing in the market? How do we build all of the tools and processes that we're going to market with versus, maybe some slightly more established players and sort of leveraging and learning from their playbooks.
Awesome. Yeah. I also have, I can't name names. Well, I could, but I'm not going to, interviewed some AEs recently who obviously work at some very big companies, big brand names, kind of carrying the weight of the outreach. And I like what you just said there about being a BD in the early days with like no brand recognition. I don't think some people understand how hard that can be. You found there's like a big difference, or were you pretty good at it as well from the offset?
I think it was a simpler role because phones still worked for me. So I had a spreadsheet. Yeah. I just had a spreadsheet and it was fintech. So it was like banks, wealth management firms. Like, I could find 50 people at the business that I could probably try and get as a meeting with. And, I had the data tool. So I just was hammering the phones and, that wasn't overplayed at the time. So that really worked for me.
Do you do much cold calling now? Or, well,
if you ask my CRO, probably not as much as I should do, but I should still try and find a couple of hours.
Yeah, it's interesting. I built my, sorry, we're kind of going off a tangent here. We'll get into the questions in a second, but I kind of built my career off email, and like I started that in 2017. And then I learned outsourcing, like found out outsourced talent to build spreadsheets quicker. And then I found Apollo in like 2018. That was like the heyday, 2018 to 2021. And then spam, filters caught up. And then, but I'm always interested as to what tactics work best now, but maybe we'll dive deeper into some of those. Right, Michael. So I've collated a number of challenges here from the community, specifically sales related. Obviously, account-based marketing, started with marketing, but I've gone to the dark side now and started interviewing sales leaders more down in the trenches where the action's happening. So I figured probably should run them up together. But kind of following that principle of account-based marketing, kind of question one I have for you is like when teams do focus on, and I don't know if you guys do it at Trumpet or not, or if it's a free for all. I know every company's different, but when teams do focus on a smaller number of high value accounts, where do you, theory's a wonderful thing, right? But where do you feel it breaks down in the execution?
Yeah. And because we don't break down by sort of company size, we run everything from like 50 full-time employees up to 10,000. We really need a blended approach. So I'll have my like diamond tier accounts, and then I've got sort of tier 1, tier 2 buckets. I think that execution really breaks down on that high value account perspective when we really look at sort of arbitrary metrics, meetings booked, activity tracking. I think sales is like is a real machine, and you really should see every behavior and every outcome and how it influences the next. So when you've got sort of blended account patch like that, I probably need 2 or 3 big conversations going on for Q3 and for Q4 with then a safer set of maybe 8, 9 SMB conversations going on as well to give me the coverage. But for me to open those things up, I can't walk into Q3 and say, right, I need to go and hit these numbers now. I need to be thinking about that way out. So if I've not worked backwards to say, right, how do I make sure that I've got the coverage to be safe in Q3? And how do I need to drive that now? Because those conversations don't move the same way. For me, I think where teams maybe fall down in that execution is they just give a sort of arbitrary top line number, like hit 100 cold calls or prospect sequence 20 different accounts this week. And like, it's not connected with, okay, but what's the outcome of that going to be? Like, I'm expecting, based on my current conversions, that I should maybe book 2 of those meetings. Like, I'm not thinking about how that influences my pipeline and creates a smooth pipeline throughout the course of the year. And that really should also sort of tie into then like the ABM piece of marketing. If they are going to these target accounts that I'm trying to build up for the next quarter with the same messaging that I am at the same time to the same people, we're driving a much better level of conversation with a higher sort of conversion rate than we are if we are just hitting numbers to be like, hey, Sam, I need to book a meeting with you tomorrow. Like, I'm going to open up a conversation I think is going to bear fruit in 6 months' time. So I'm calling to tell you about this is something I think we could really drive a solution for with you. This is something I think you're going to care about based on the other companies we're speaking with. And I'm leveraging the familiarity that we've built through marketing to those right contacts, trying to create that dual-sided sort of conversation and awareness.
It's really nice that from a sales perspective, you're seeing this from like a long, like winded lens. Have you worked in marketing before or not? No.
I've not, no, but I've always enjoyed working with marketing.
Okay. Well, you're recording, so you have to say that. Yeah, not what I hear off. Like, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, it's really nice because obviously marketers battle with that, and I feel like marketing is so broken when you focus. It's like activity based marketing, as like you said, like we need this number of inputs and blah 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 blah. When actually you need to frame it through kind of like the customer's lens and work backwards, which is exactly what you articulated. Banging. Okay, nice. We'll unpack that a bit more in the second challenge, which is kind of prioritization over action. So you mentioned there, like the diamond tier accounts as well. So they're the whales, I guess. You got the diamonds and then you got tier 1s and 2s. What do you find personally harder, or like in general, sweeping statement, knowing which accounts matter most? So sure, you've got all the signals going on, you can leverage all this sort of stuff, or like knowing how to engage them. Once you've agreed that this is the list, do you come up with any blockers?
So for me, I think I almost want to flip the question on its head and sort of say, which one is harder without the right support?
Yeah.
Prioritization, like we sort of touched on the top there, like I used to just dial through the list of the biggest wealth management firms to try and book his meetings. And I can maybe look at LinkedIn, I can maybe look at who looks the most like our customers to give me some level of warm versus cold and prioritization. But ultimately, I'm always going to have a list. There's always somewhere that I can go to try and find a couple of leads or work off of an account base in the CRM, and I will get some success with things like Clay, with intent signals, with all of those different tools that we can use now. We can really create this like great staggered list of like, here are your highest propensity customers that you book meetings with, and that will increase your conversion. But I think the harder thing is if you don't have the right support on how you action it. And for me, the key to not just creating really compelling outreach, but how we create a joined up customer message across marketing and sales, across first interaction through to close, is by building out a strong value messaging framework. So looking at our customer base, and I've done this recently with sort of Gong recordings. I've taken like our 200 last customer calls and said, right, Claude, tell me, like, what do people come to us? Like, what are the key themes? Because if you understand, like, we have these 5 key buckets of things that we solve for these customers, and here's how they present for different roles, and this is what we can do to solve them. Suddenly the messaging that marketing are going out with is about creating awareness of those problems that other people solve. And my messaging is really easy for me to build. Messaging for cold calling, messaging over LinkedIn, messaging in email, because I'm talking to these same things. And suddenly it's not just like logo recognition, but like messaging recognition. Like the things that our marketing are making people query about their processes are the same things that I'm then challenging. So we're making sure we're not like losing brand familiarity by speaking in a different way than our marketing team speaks, or even just across the team. Like if we don't have a clear value messaging framework, I'm probably going out to market and saying the 3 things that we solve the three biggest problems our customers have might be very different from the next rep and the next rep on the team.
Big respect for you. You're currently you're operating like a CRO, but also doing like a sales ops role and being an AE at the same time. All within the theme of Trumpet. Obviously, I think you do prospecting all the way through to expansion. So that's brilliant.
Yeah, I think I think you've got to, it's that startup thing, right? Like it's ownership. You've got to have high ownership. You can't sort of say, this is a problem, run it up the flag. You've got to be like, there was a problem, here's a solution I've already built for it.
Yeah. So on that, just on that, like a little sub kind of question, I try to keep to a minimum because of time, but like, what is the relationship between with you and marketing? Like, it sounds like you're doing kind of almost like your own account scoring and kind of like the custom messaging and figuring that all out yourself. Yeah. Like, do you come together on like a weekly basis to discuss, compare, or?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm doing all of the account scoring. I think, that's something that, have your best players doing their best suited roles. I think where we try and build as much alignment as possible is where on that messaging. So it's like, are we all aligned? The way that the company mission rolls down, like what are we solving for customers? What are the typical ways that they manifest? And if we're aligned on what it is we're trying to solve, then our messaging will be aligned as well. So I think it's more about creating alignment on what we think we're doing for businesses.
Nice. This is just helpful for me as well, for like from a small business startup mindset. Right, challenge 3. Back to those diamond accounts, I guess. So on Complex, and this is going to be a plug for Trumpet. I really other digital sales platforms are available, I should say, but on complex multi-stakeholder deals, what do reps struggle with most? Is it the multi-threading? Is it finding the right decision makers? Obviously, momentum is a big one, and I ask this question a lot because I think there's so many like different ways complex deals break down. But yeah, what's your take?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any way for me to answer this without plugging Trumpet. Like you said, other inferior digital sales rooms are available. It's not necessarily which one do reps struggle with the most, but it's, do you know which one you're struggling with in which deal?
Yeah.
The whole concept of Trumpet, right, is that there is 95% of the deal that is happening whilst you're not in the room. Like we have live calls like this, we might text, we might jump on the phone, but 95% of the evaluation is happening behind their closed doors internally. So I have no idea whether the person I think is my champion is going to other people in the business. How senior are they going in the business? I don't know whether we have business units involved in the evaluation who I haven't met with yet, who might have different stakes or might be championing different solutions. I think the big thing here is what we struggle with is the knowledge of which one we're struggling with. And the only way to get insights into that is to leverage tools like Trumpet that allow us to sort of map those conversations on the back end, actually create an easier way for champions to go and sell deals as well.
Have to get Trumpet to sponsor or something. Yeah. I remember playing with Trumpet. I think it was in 2021. We don't use any digital sales tools, but I was talking to a friend I don't know if I can name them because then she might get in trouble, but they use Trumpet and she was like, and I couldn't believe that they didn't have a digital sales room, but it was like, she said it was like night and day with like how they were doing deals before to afterwards. So there you go. There's a plug for me as well.
Yeah.
Cross-team support, we mentioned it very briefly. Maybe we don't need to go over this one, but the question was, how do marketing and enablement unintentionally or intentionally, but I don't think they would, unintentionally make your life harder? And then likewise, what genuinely helps you win? So you mentioned the alignment piece, very important, but yeah, any hidden tricks or tips?
Yeah, I think it's really a continuation of that. I've never worked with a marketing or enablement team that I genuinely think have hindered me, but I've definitely worked with teams that I'm like, they have their finger on the pulse. They know what we need. And, from an enablement perspective, it might be, what are the biggest blockers for you? What are the biggest drains of low efficiency work that you're doing right now? And from a marketing perspective, it's leaning back into that value messaging framework for me. You might have to give you sort of an example, I guess, you might have a customer story and it's like, hey, this customer story is great because they're in the same industry as this company. You could share this. We put together, this video clip of the customer and here's like a proof point of what it drives. And that's a really great asset for you to use. But a stronger proposition for that asset is if we as a business have an understanding of what was the challenge that they came to us with, the 5 things that we typically solve. How did it manifest for them? What was it that they needed to change in order to alleviate that challenge? And how did we do it? And how do we do it better? Because that way we're not just going, hey, they work in the same industry, because they might have completely different challenges. But I know that if I'm going out and I've got the inkling of a signal or from a below the line conversation or for something I've seen online, I think you might be struggling with this challenge. And that resonates much more than this company also works in the same industry as you, because I'm saying this company is struggling with the same thing you're struggling with. And I think that gets better resonation.
For sure. A lot of people that, I wouldn't say there's quite a few people that I've spoken to recently have said that, and it's less about what they're finding, and this kind of leads into the next part, which is practice, which I guess could be aligned with what we just spoke about. Hey, marketing have created this great value framework, right? How do you ensure that you're then, like, as reps, I don't know who would use it. I guess it would be Enablement's job to kind of bring that marketing and sales department together to figure that out. But like, how do you kind of practice those high value conversations and that targeting so that you are showing up with the right way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're always trying to almost challenge your assumptions. If you are on a regular basis reevaluating, like, what are people coming to us? Are we seeing changes? Like, are these breaking the assumptions we have on what we solve for customers? Then you're always going to be up to speed with the biggest things that customers are struggling with. And yeah, I think tools like Gong are a great way of very quickly digesting like all of your most recent calls and saying, are they still talking about the things that customers were talking about 6 months ago?
Yeah, very important. That's how it goes. Right. The final part of this is we've got a couple of questions from other A's and VPs of sales. First is from Shane Mitchell at Revolut, and he asked, what separates average from exceptional should be performers in your sales team? Exceptional performances in your sales team.
Yeah, I've written a whole article on this before. For me, the biggest thing that separates those two different players is consistency. I've seen so many sellers in my career who have the capability of a blowout quarter, setting records. Quite often they're the ones that walk around the office, walk and talk like a seller, and you're like, they're good. They've got the chat, and they are just as likely to potentially have a really bad quarter as well. I feel like those things, that level of volatility follows. What I see as more valuable in colleagues, in what leadership have valued, and what I like to think that I bring most of the time is like being the Volvo in the team. Like, you're coming in, you might not do the 200%, you're doing a 150, but the biggest thing is when you are missing, you're not doing a 20%, you're doing a 90%, because you have that obsession about data where you are modeling for what do I need next quarter? What do I need next quarter? Coverage is not a perfect model because we have variance in sales, but coverage should protect us from high levels of variance. And so we might have a great quarter because we set ourselves up and a few things swung our way. And so we did 140, but we've created enough through the 6 months prior where we've been prospecting, where we've been building conversations across target accounts and SMB accounts, so we come in with a really healthy pipeline from day one in that quarter.
So what does that look like then? Like, how, like, discipline, routine, like what's your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, there's one book that I can't recommend more than anything else, which is the 4 Disciplines of Execution. Like, I've taken the learnings from this and I've put it into the way that I operate for the last 8 years now. The key principles are basically figure out the very first leading indicator. This isn't just even about sales. I think one of the examples in the book is about safety in like a manufacturing warehouse. It's like, what is the absolute first thing that has to happen that leads to those outcomes you're trying to drive? And in sales, that's really easy. It's like your top of your funnel activities. But it's not like tracking meetings booked. It's like something that I have to do. There's a lever I have to pull before we have a meeting booked. So identify what that behavior is, create a live scoreboard of how you are tracking against that metric, create a regular program of accountability. So checking it every single week, how are we doing against it? And then creating accountability with leadership to that behavior. So if you're accountable on a regular basis with a live scoreboard on the leading thing that drives revenue at the end of the day, and you follow that on a week-to-week basis, like, you're always going to raise the floor, basically, of your performance.
Okay, but so that, yeah, and for you personally, do you are you set? Well, do you do much prospecting anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have an SDR team here, so we are driven a lot by our marketing department, who are fantastic, but we also need to take accountability and ownership ourselves. Every role I've walked into for the last 4 or 5 roles, I carry this huge spreadsheet that I built out over time, which is like, I've got all the inputs for conversions and sales cycles and win rates and at different tiers, and says, right, here's the activities I need to do every single week. And if I'm making sure I'm hitting those, I know that in a quarter, 2 quarters time, I'm going to have the coverage.
That's one way to ease the anxiety of sales, isn't it?
Yes.
Great answer. Michael, do you have 10 more minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Questions? Cool. So the last two, one came from Ali Miller, who's the VP of Sales at Contentsquare, I think formerly Hotjar. He asked, how do you use AI in a way that stays personal and not generic like everyone else? And he's also asked a second question, quite sneaky, but what signals do you rely on most to know an account is ready to be contacted?
Yeah, I really love this question. I've learned a lot this year into like what can I do with different AI tools and models, and what works well for what, and playing with things like Revolut, playing with Claude, and I've really settled on Claude as my preferred sort of LLM agent. The biggest thing with AI to make sure that it's personal is there's a couple of things on the setup side, and then there's like one project that I built out that I'm really sort of proud of. So context, give it as much context as possible, preset it, tell it to do the research, tell it to set success criteria for the project before you start any work with it. So, when I talk about the value messaging framework that we built out here, like I took ownership of that. I put in 200 Gong call transcripts and, got it to understand what those pains were first. And then from an outbound messaging perspective, the way I created something personal at scale that didn't feel like any other AI written message was, one, it's already trained on, sort of 200 hours of customer calls. But two, I'm then looking at, well, what are the personalization triggers? So that sort of feeds into the second piece of the question. I'm looking at, I tried building it in Apollo a year ago, 27 different sequences. Like, are they hiring? Looking at job ads, like, how do they describe their sales process? Is it complex? Is it technical? Do they have SEs? What kind of role is the person that I'm going after? How senior are they? And what I built in Claude was this architect, is that what they call it? Artifact, sorry. Where you can select the pain that you think that they might be struggling with most, select their role, select a number of these triggers, and it will generate 3 different variants based on 3 recommended sort of messaging frameworks. And it will give you a concise version, which I'm always using for CROs because they do not want a second line on what you're sending out. It will give you a voice note version, so you can just read off a script, and it will give you a sort of email and a LinkedIn message variant as well. So the context and then the editor, final editor view over what comes out as well. I think are the keys to making something really personal.
It sounds like a wild workflow. And
Yeah.
really smart as well. Nice. Okay, final question. You've made it, Michael. It's come in from Arnaud Lagarde, who I actually spoke to earlier today. He asked, what is the best sales enablement technology implemented and why? And which one has delivered the most impact? Hit me with it.
Yeah, I have to do it. Spent so many years selling into different buyer roles, selling into different industries, and coming to Trumpet was this awakening moment for me, because all of the things that these people struggled with and the way that the market was moving and changing at the same time, it was like it couldn't be more important to get something like this in a buyer's hands, because it's not really even about sales enablement. I mean, it is, because it makes my life a hell of a lot easier, but it's really about buyer enablement, because the way people buy has had to change a lot. There is more people involved in the decision than ever before. There's like 12 to 15 on average. And that's not even like enterprise, that incorporates SMB. You've got potentially 15 people influencing a decision. It takes longer than ever to get there. And you probably have to go more senior for the same level of sign off on spend. With all of those factors combined, for a potential buyer, someone who is not like a full-time buyer, you're asking them to really quarterback this deal in the same way that you are on their side. And you're saying, can you give me 6 months of your life, of your career, to help take this project over the line? We're going to have to go to so many more people. We're going to have to go so far up the chain. It's a big undertaking for people. But before you even get to the point of like, is this something that we can solve for the business? And we're asking them, hey, are you interested in this? We really should be asking them, are you willing to do this? Because they might be interested and they might say yes, but they're not the person who wants to take it on. So how do we make their life as simple as possible? Like, that is Trumpet.
Bringing it all into one place. Superb. Michael, you've made it. Congratulations. The final thing that I have to ask is, do you have a question for our next guest?
I should do.
You can also ping it to me afterwards via LinkedIn or something.
Yeah, I might need to refine it a little bit, but the thing that I am always really interested in hearing about is what data points people are looking at from that science-based model. Like, what conversion points are you trying to tweak at the moment? Like, I know lots of people who talk about sort of discounting at the end of a deal and reducing down that rate to increase performance. And I know lots of people who talk about maybe POC conversions, but with AI now, I feel like there's so many more data points that people are uncovering. So like, here's a conversion point that we can tweak. And so I, really love to know about what the most recent or newest things that people are trying to move the needle on as a refined piece of the sales process are.
Yeah, there's definitely a good question.
Isn't it?
Well, no, it's just such a big. I've been thinking about it a lot as well. It's because it comes up in like all these roundtables as well. Like AI has given us all these data points, and well, it's the argument on LinkedIn. It's like AI has allowed us to do so much so quickly, but is any of this really driving any business form of outcomes? It's like, and you've almost kind of got like decision paralysis now from all these data points. And I think I'll ask people much smarter than me for their take on it. But just yeah, kind of my thought process is I think every company's going to have like their own equation of data points, aren't they? That's going to have to be bespoke to them. But yeah, on earth do you find that? And that's like the big one. Solid question. You're going to catch a few people out, I'm sure. Uh, Michael, thank you very much for joining.
No worries at all. Thanks, Sam.